Everything's perfect, but it's cold. Absolutely perfect, but completely cold. Well, that's the way things go. I got to get my heater fixed. Not fixed, but I got to get it finished. I'm building a heater for it. Yeah, I do weird things like that. I like to do my own stuff. I like to. Beautiful day today. September 25th, 2017. This is a special day. This is my son's birthday, my oldest son. And today, this video is dedicated to him because I'm going to talk about the story of how our life started together. Yeah, this is going to be a good story. Now, hey, for all of you who are just tuning in to Luinator59 and trying to figure out what exactly all these series of videos means, it's a life series, and I'm trying to document for my grandchildren's and my great-grandchildren and whoever wants to watch in the future, a series of videos that talks about my life. And that's what we're going to get today. We're going to talk about something really crazy. In fact, today I am going to tell you a crazy, no, it's not a crazy story, but it's one that you're not going to expect, but it's real and it happened. And I think you're going to find it very interesting.
Luinator 59, Luinator 59, Luinator 59. You should follow Luinator 59.
Come on, boy. Oh, come on, boy. Come on, big jump. There you go. Oh man, the sun's bright. Bright. I gotta get myself amped up to tell the story. Bright sun. Aw, Snoopy, a cat's peed on our window. Right there. You're supposed to get all the cats out of here, man. You're letting me down, Bubba. It's starting to get warmer too. Get a little air going here. Okay, we're there to where the story begins. Yep, right in front of my house. This is where the story begins. You see, we moved here in 1975, and I was riding my bike through this neighborhood and found this property for sale. I came home and told my folks about it, and my dad came over and looked at it and he bought it. And so we moved over here when I was about 15 or 16. Now we are somewhere. Look at this dog. Look at him. You ready? He loves this. He loves this park. Watch this. Look at him go. Get him, get him, get him. This is that park that has the labyrinth in it. I love this labyrinth. When I need to just walk and think, come here and get on the labyrinth and walk around. Now I'm gonna walk and talk. So we bought that property, or my parents bought that property, and moved in. I started going to Bellflower High School. I think my parents kind of understood how it was going to be when I came home, the first homecoming at 8 o'clock at night, so drunk that I was gone. They ended up having to take me to the hospital. I was so drunk. But yeah, that's the way my life went at Bellflower High School. There was just like, well, everything was there. I mean, all the kids, all the attitudes, all the drugs, all the alcohol, all the fun, all the fights, all that stuff. It was the typical high school scene, I guess. I mean, it wasn't that way when I went to the Christian school. But anyway, so I grew up a pretty rough kid. I told you once in a video before that I had and I'm gonna go through them real quick. I had a paper route, I worked at a Christmas tree lot, I worked at a submarine sandwich shop, then I went on to a place called Builder's Emporium, which was a home furnishing store. And then from there I went on to a company in Paramount called CGI, where they made bus panels for big electrical installations. And I didn't work out too good there. I wasn't catching on. I was really intimidated by that place. It was a big man's job, and I wasn't a big man yet. So then I got hooked up with some skateboarders at Lakewood Skateboard Park, and we started touring and stuff and professional skateboard type things. And then came the day that they said, here, this is your ticket. We're leaving. We're going to Cherry Hill, New Jersey. We're building a skate park there. I didn't know what to do. So I told them I couldn't. That's the only decision I could make. It was so uncertain, I couldn't go. So I stayed behind, and all my skateboard friends went to the East Coast. Yeah, so let's see. Kept dating and working, and ran into a bunch of friends that went to another school. In fact, went to the school of the girls that I used to try to go date. They had the pretty girls at their school. We had the good-looking guys at our school. So, okay, this is getting long. I'm gonna zoom it up real quick. So, anyways, I went through this just a life of working and having money to buy alcohol, and I like to smoke pot a lot. And well, who doesn't? I mean, but I used to love to smoke pot, and I ended up getting a job at a company where there was a very understanding guy there who mentored me. Actually, he wanted out. He didn't want to work there anymore. So he trained me up to do his job, and as he was training me how to do it all the easy ways. He ran a 28-foot hollow spindle lathe. That's massive. And he would take big, long 60-foot spans of 5.5-inch steel, raw steel, and turn it down into a nice, smooth stainless steel drilling bar for drilling rigs. Oh, very, very intricate piece of work. And so I was his helper, but he trained me how to do it. And as he was training me, he was teaching me all these things like, well, this is all we're gonna do today. We're gonna kind of coast the rest of the day. And I didn't understand that. I still don't understand that mentality today, but it was there. So I started doing the work, and then eventually he left the company, and they left me in charge of the hollow spindle lathe and the Kelly production for this company called Joy Petroleum. That became my first real job, and I did in did a good job at it. In fact, I found out that I could do twice as much work that that guy did in the day, and I doubled their production at that plant. And it was working with a union called the AFL-CIO. I was making $19 an hour, and I had big bucks coming in. Big bucks. Especially for, I had a real job. And but I had friends that were still, well, I was hanging with a rock band. And when you got money, guess who ends up financing a lot of the rock band stuff? Yeah. Wasn't a smart kid. Wasn't a smart kid at all. In fact, I was pretty dumb to things. The only thing I did know how to do was work. And so that's what I did. But then there was the rock band. Now this is really weird to me. I came back to the neighborhood where, oh, they've redone the house now. But this is the house where the rock band kind of originated from. Very weird story here. The dad was an engineer and very nerdy. The family knew it and they didn't respect him. I guess, I don't know, I don't think he put much into his kids. Well, his wife ended up getting talked into a boob job by my friend the drummer, and eventually they started sleeping together. So the guitarist's mother was sleeping with the drummer, and we were infesting the whole house with drugs. So yeah, that was life. I mean, I hung around with these guys for a long time and still worked. Then one day the drummer looked at me and he said, "Hey Lou," he says, "why don't you give me a job?" I thought, well, yeah, we could use a new helper there, because they hadn't hired a helper since me, because I was doing enough work for myself and the helper. I was doing it all. But they hired him, and right away he got in. Well, he wasn't very skilled. I watched him almost tear a whole wall down at the plant, and the boss came along and fired him. Yeah, he took a big, he was carrying about 8,000 pounds of steel on a huge elevated crane, and he ran right into the double doors that go outside, and he almost took it out. So anyways, I'm trying to drive and talk. So the boss looks at him and he says, "Well, you're fired." And he looks at the boss and he says, "Well, if I'm going, he's going." And my friend looked at me and says, or the boss looks at me and says, "Is that right?" I said, and it was that stupid sense of, oh, well, yeah, we're friends. And I said, "Yeah, that's right." And so I quit working there. And I decided to take a 3 or 4 month vacation, and that's what we did. We hung out there at the house, we played gigs, we drank like crazy, we smoked like crazy, and that went on for about 3 or 4 months, and then I found myself really regretting life, regretting my decisions, regretting where I was. We were out of marijuana. We didn't have money for alcohol. Shoot, I didn't have gas money. I had a brand new Ford F-150 truck and I didn't have gas money. The truck was parked at the house and I would walk over to hang out with them. We'd play games all day. Risk, Monopoly, chess. I mean, games. And that's what life became. A big, long sit around and play games. And I was going through a depression that you just wouldn't believe. I mean, my depression was so deep. Well, you've been there. You know what depression's like. I guess I don't have to talk to anybody about depression. So I got in a real deep depression. And I remember sitting in a chair in their dining room with my head in my hands and my elbows on my knees, just staring at the floor. And all of a sudden it became very clear what I was doing to my life. Now, I had Christian upbringing at school, not at home, but at school. And I didn't know too much about what church was like or anything. Well, I didn't know anything about church. I'd never been in one. Went to church school. But I do remember putting my head in my hands and praying to God, saying, God, I've really screwed up my life. Look what I've done with it. You gave it to me and I've trashed it. I'm sorry. Forgive me. And I remember telling God, you know, I want a good job and I want to meet a good woman and settle down and have a family. Please forgive me. Come back into my heart. And I said, amen. Nah, things didn't happen overnight, and you won't believe the response I got from God. In fact, that's where the rest of the story goes. I came home shortly after, and my mom says to me, hey, there's all those Coke bottles on the back porch. Get them off. Get them out of here. So I took all the Coke bottles and I walked up to the store and I traded them in. Then you could trade them in for money. I got about $1.75 in gas and took my truck up, put the gas in it, and the only thing I knew in my head was I need to work. And I knew that there were oil companies in Santa Fe Springs, so that's where I headed, Santa Fe Springs. You know, our history is being bulldozed. Yeah. I'm standing right about the area that Union Oil Company was in Santa Fe Springs. I was hoping it would still be here because there was a large building right here. Almost looked like a college campus. And it was just a bunch of, it was red brick and it was all green doors. And when I pulled into the parking lot, there was this one green door that just, it looked like that was my destiny. It didn't have any markings, it didn't say anything. And I didn't know where I was. I just knew this was the Union Oil Company, and so I walked in. And I remember, and I was hoping to find that very same door to show you today. But I was hoping to find it so I could walk up to it once again and remember that feeling of what it felt like looking at that door and knowing on the other side was destiny. I knew it in my head. I didn't know what was on the other side of the door, but I knew it in my head. Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't get to find that door, because when I walked up to the door and grabbed the handle, I knew on the other side was destiny. So I walked in and there was an empty room with a girl sitting behind a desk. And I walked up to her and she says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yes, I'd like a job application." And she goes, "Oh, well, we're not giving out job applications here." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I turned around and started to walk out, and a gentleman walked in from the door right behind her. And he says, "What does he want?" I said, "Oh, he wanted a job application." And the guy comes over to me and he says, "We're not handing out job applications." And something inside me says, "Tell him the truth." And so I walked up to him and I said, I thought I was a hot shot. I was working in AFL-CIO hollow spindle lathe machine. I was a machine operator. And I quit my job thinking I could get a job anywhere. It's been 3 months, I'm out of money now, and I need to work. And the guy looked at me and he says, "Well, we're not taking applications right now because we've got some affirmative action hiring to do." Otherwise, he was telling me I was the wrong color, which is okay with me. You know, I understand. I understood what was going on during those days. You know, they were trying to level things out, and rightly they should, because companies back then, they hired from within. There was a lot of nepotism. And so anyways, he says, "We're not hiring." And he looks at me and he says, "Well," he says, "I could have you fill out an application, but I can't do anything more than that. I can put it in on the stack." I said, "Okay." So I filled out the application, brought it back to him, and he says, "Well," he looks at it and he says, "Let me give you an aptitude test." So he put me in this room with a bunch of engineers, or people who were there taking tests to be an engineer. And it turned out this was the hiring office. I walked right into it. So I take this aptitude test and I bring it back to him. And I remember walking into his office. He was a nice, proper man. And he sits down at his chair and he had all of his pencils lined up in a row. And he grabs his first pen and he goes, and he looks at the first question and goes, "Well, these are kind of worded funny." And he says, "Let me ask you this." He says, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." I don't even remember the question. And he said, "You knew that, didn't you?" And his head started going like this more. And I said, "Yeah. Know it now?" He goes to the next one and he says, "All right." And he erases it and he puts the right answer in there. And he goes to the next one and he looks up at me and goes, "This one's wrong too." And he started to go into it, and then he just looked at me and he started erasing. And he erased every single one of my answers and marked the right answers. And he looks at me and he says, "Congratulations, you got 100%. And I want to hire you. But I can't right now. This is going to take me about 3 months, but I want to hire you." He says, "In the meantime," and he picks up his phone and he starts dialing. And he says, "You're going to go to work. You're going to go to work for Heath Construction and work for them until I call for you, and then I'm going to call for you." He says, "Tomorrow morning, you be at this address, 5 a.m. Oh yeah, he talked on the phone and said, "John, I'm sending you a guy I want to hire, put him to work for 3 months," and hangs up the phone. He says, "Yeah, you be there at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning and don't be late." And I walked out. I had a job. I had a job. It was in Santa Ana. I didn't know what it was going to be about, but I had a job. Now, if you look over my corner, you could see way off in the distance. You know, actually, I don't know how that's going to pick up. But way off in the distance, you could see a little hill right here. That's Palos Verdes Peninsula. And over there is the port of Los Angeles. And that's where my new job was going to take me. Okay, so here's the story. The next morning, I was out in Santa Ana at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was ready. And the place was a parking lot, and it had a little trailer in the middle of it. I walked into the trailer, and the guy says, "You're Lou." And I said, "Yeah, I'm Lou." And he says, "Well, this is John." And there was a biker standing next to him. And he says, "This is your new, this is your foreman. And you and him are going out to Terminal Island, and you're gonna get us back the Mobil Oil contract. We've almost lost it, so out there you got a brand new car, you got a brand new truck, brand new tools, everything. Go get us that contract." And so we drove from Santa Ana down here to Terminal Island. Over here was the maintenance yard for Mobil Oil. And they took us right over there, right next to this big tank right here. And they took us right over here and had us start digging. It didn't take any brains, and it was hot, but it was sand, and it was easy to dig. And so we dug, and we were putting in support columns for pipelines that were being put in to go to these tanks. So for 3 days, I kept showing up and digging in a big pile of sand. And that's all I did for 3 days, dig. And I remember I was down in the bottom of a ditch, and the foreman for Mobil Oil walked over to me, and he looks down and he goes, "Hey kid, how'd you like to work for Mobil Oil?" And I said, "Well, I've already got an opportunity to work for Union Oil, and they told me to wait." And he says, "Come on." So he took me into the main office, which was over there. It's not there anymore. They're bulldozing history. I don't blame him. So he took me into the office, walked me into the supervisor's office, or the area manager's office, and filled out an application, did an aptitude test. I knew all the answers for the aptitude test now. And I ended up getting hired for Mobil Oil. I went home and told my dad, "Hey, Mobil Oil asked me to go to work for them." And he looks at me and goes, "Bullshit." And I said, "No, he really did." See, my dad didn't think I could amount to much. He didn't have confidence in me. And he was right. There was nothing quality about the way I was living life. But I knew how to dig sand, so that worked. So I ended up going to work for Mobil Oil, and during that time I went to a party and met a girl named Tammy. And I wasn't one to even consider getting married. No way I was getting married. But on the second week of knowing her, one morning it just hit me that she was the right woman. So after 2 weeks of knowing her, I asked her to marry me. And then, right before we got married, about 2 weeks before that, we found out she was pregnant. And I was gonna have a son. Yeah. There's spiders coming out of these trees. Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. They have a bad problem with spiders here. That's right. The spiders crawl into all the camera systems and do webs over the cameras. I know. I ended up being a supervisor over Terminal Island. But anyways, so let me go somewhere and find a better place. Now, when my son was born, Chris, yeah, Chris, when my son was born, I had to go back and recount the events that had happened. Here, I had to recount the events that had happened. It was only about a year and a half when Chris was born. It was only a year and a half before I was sitting in that house over in Cerritos with my head in my hands praying. But now I had a great job, a new baby, I was married, and I was going back to church. Or I was going to church. I didn't know what the church experience was supposed to be like, so we were kind of at a straight-laced church, and I was bound and determined I was going to be a better person. And we ended up not staying there long because it turns out Christianity isn't everything that I thought it was. Yeah, it's very important, it's highly important, but it is the number one misunderstood subject on earth. And it makes sense. I mean, if I was the enemy and I wanted to mix you up and not let you learn about Christianity, then I'm gonna throw all kinds of falsehoods your way. You know, I don't know if I told the story well, but it's quite a story. Get the Coke bottles off the back porch. $1.75 in gasoline. Down to Santa Fe Springs. Up to a door. Through the door. The guy fixed my test. Got me a job. The company that we went to work for wanted to hire me. I went to work for them. Pretty bizarre. It all just came about. People came up to me, wanting me to go to work for them. Everything was provided. And when I went to work for Mobil Oil, that got even stranger. Immediately they put me, trained me as a station operator. Hey, get back here. Immediately they trained me as a station operator, and I got to travel all up and down the Southern California, looking at pipeline stations and making sure everything was running right. Yeah, so I did that for a few months, and then they wanted me to train for a delivery gauger job, which was a salary position. So I trained for it. And then, before I even had a year in the company, they promoted me permanent into that job. That job, all the old men and the old people, they were they were pissed. Because that job, they had to come in and break in on their own time. And it usually took them several months working on their own time to learn the job. And yet I come into the company and all of a sudden it's just handed to me. And I was promoted permanent to that position before I had a year in the company. So from nothing to everything. And I attribute it to my prayer to God. And out of it, I ended up getting some wonderful sons and a wonderful wife and a wonderful family. I love you all. Chris, happy birthday. I am so glad that I got to tell the story. Now to get home and do the editing and put the music and all that other stuff, I just never know how these things are going to come out until later. So, what I'll say to you is, faith in God's important. God knew that, and God sought me out. That's the wild thing about it. God seeks us out. God comes after us. He's looking to have a personal relationship with us and for us to realize that He's real. That's it. He is real. And once you realize that He is real, ooh, there's a fish down in the water. Once you realize that He is real and that all of this earth is His, then you start to wake up to a whole new world of surprises and amazements. People say, oh, Christianity ain't real. It's all false. It's fake. Well, yeah, you know what? There's a lot of fakery Christianity. I agree. But the real part, the real piece is real. And God changes your lives. And no, I don't want to make it sound like I said a prayer and all of a sudden everything was right. No, it wasn't right. I still kept doing drugs and drinking, and it took quite a few years for the message to get into my head, to see what I was doing in my life and how it wasn't really helping things out any. So from here in Terminal Island, I'm going to say to you, be good humans. If you can't be good, be better. If you can't be better, oh well. And help somebody out today. Make somebody's life better. Are you in a position of hiring people? Are you in a position where you can change somebody's life with a job? I tell you what, that's what we need in America. Going off to college and a college education, I found out, is very little. Very little. Getting out and working and learning it from a field level is everything. And I had a great career at Mobil Oil. God knew exactly what He was doing in my life. So peace out from Terminal Island. Chris, I hope you have a happy birthday. I love you so much, son. You were one of the greatest things that happened in my life. Great blessings. I mean, whew. Following God isn't as scary as people think it is. And you don't become as kooky as people think you become. You know, I started to, but everything's straightened out. So I'm gonna wrap it up right here, leave you guys. I gotta get home, I got some things to do. Chris, I hope you had a fantastic birthday. I love you, son, with all my heart. You are a blessing from God, and I want to let you know how much of a blessing from God. Without God's work in my life, you wouldn't have happened, son, but you did. And I love you, and I love Him. Peace.